Ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot to talk about this evening. Everybody was involved in setting up and framing President Trump. Everybody. Jake Sullivan was given the information on Alfa Bank from Christopher Steele. They both spread complete fake news. And then they said, well, we didn't really know if it was accurate or not. Under oath, they said, we don't know if it was accurate. In the media, they were claiming that Trump was a Russian operative and working with Putin. Read the National Review article in the description. I will get to that in a moment. We're going to hear Patel and Nunes right now, and Tucker Carlson talk about this. And the Durham probe is setting its sights on Jake Sullivan. That's what Jonathan Turley wrote about in Fox News. They've already indicted 2 attorneys. There's numerous attorneys, especially one in particular, from the Clinton-linked law firm that purchased the Steele dossier that face almost certain indictments. And you have the whole house of cards falling. It's going to take time. They set up and framed Trump with a complete absurd, nonsensical, irrational story. You would have to have no functioning brain cells at all. At all, to believe that Trump worked with Russian operatives to swing voters. You would have to be a complete and utter imbecile to believe that an incoming American candidate won because of help from Russia. That is the dumbest thing that I've ever heard in my life, and they were very successful. So hit subscribe to this channel, to my super chat. I cannot do this without you, ladies and gentlemen. Your support via super chat is greatly appreciated. I don't have $20 million in venture capital funding like some people, like some wealthy democratic socialists. So your support is greatly appreciated if you enjoy the live streams. And hit subscribe to the Stock Market Crash channel. I will have a great segment very soon, like after this, on the Stock Market Crash channel. So subscribe to the Stock Market Crash channel. That'll be below. Read my Federalist article on the upcoming stock market crash, caused in large part, actually almost entirely, by Democratic Party policies and the advice of experts and authorities who decided to tank the entire United States economy and then pretend that you could just flip a switch and there wouldn't be a broken supply chain and labor issues. But hit subscribe. We're going to hear right now, ladies and gentlemen, Nunes and Patel. By the way, to my moderators, Luke St. Martin and Eric H526, thank you so very, very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks, everybody, and thank you to the moderators. Eric has an Odyssey and a YouTube channel. Go ahead and subscribe to those. Let's start this off.
Well, about 5 years ago, the Hillary Clinton for President campaign paid a British spy called Christopher Steele to produce a document now known as the Steele Dossier, which, despite the fact was fraudulent, really hamstrung the Trump administration virtually for the entire 4 years. That dossier claimed that Russian hackers were operating in the Russian consulate in Miami, even though, for example, there is no Russian consulate in Miami. Among other false claims, the dossier said that Donald Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, made secret trips to Prague. Now, if Cohen had been to Prague, he probably would have said so, since he turned on Trump completely, but he swore he didn't.
By the way, 18 U.S. Code 371 is the statute that you can indict, Steele, all of those attorneys, Comey, McCabe. I explained that in the Federalist. You can go to my website and read my writing on the Durham probe. I was published in a wonderful, very reputable publication. Many publications, but the Federalist is awesome. And I have been writing about the Durham probe for years. Okay? You can read my writing in 2019. And that is the statute. So, if people say, well, nothing's ever going to happen. Well, that is the legal statute, 18 U.S. Code 371. Read my article on why McCabe and Comey should be charged under that statute. Christopher Steele can also be charged under that statute. Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, can also be charged under that statute. All right? So, that is very possible. I mean, not just possible, that almost certainly will happen, that these people are going to be indicted using that statute. There'll be a great deal more indictments, more than just Sussman and Kleinsmith. But you have to look at 18 U.S. Code 371. That's the statute they tried to get Trump under. Okay, and that's not like there was no evidence that Trump did anything wrong. He's never been indicted. By the way, the January panel, Ken Pears, you've been writing about the probe, but you have never experienced the probe. It's never. Yes, canned pears. Thankfully, I've only written about it. Canned pears. Thank you. I don't have any empirical data. Canned pears. Thank you. Starting it off with one of the great names and interesting messages on this channel's history. In this channel's history. Thank you so very much, canned pears. Thank you. Thank you, canned pears. Awesome. So, they tried to get him the collusion statute. There is no specific collusion statute. The people who colluded were Christopher Steele and others. It is so obvious they went after Trump for political gain. It is so obvious they did this. It is so incredibly obvious that this is not a difficult. Durham just has to take his time. That's all. It's a special counsel. So he has all the time in the world. He could take 2-3 more years. So, plus he's going to need also investigations from House Republicans, which will start. Those investigations will start once Republicans take the House. Canned pears, thank you so very, very much. And real investigations, not like hamstrung by Paul Ryan.
Most famously, the dossier said the Russians possessed a lurid tape that they were using to blackmail Donald Trump, the famous P tape. All of this was false, and yet in a new documentary, Christopher Steele says, maybe not surprisingly, he stands by all of it.
And today, do you still believe that tape exists?
You know what? The Good Morning America theme music with Christopher Steele, since they know he was lying and nobody was ever indicted for working alongside Russian operatives, which was a hoax perpetrated by really bad people and believed by gullible buffoons, half the country, who believed this, or I should say a third of the country, who believe that Trump worked with Russia, are so gullible, they have very little grasp of reality, and to be easily duped and deceived in that manner, simply because you don't like somebody. I'm not a big fan of mashed potato brains Biden or Madam Secretary, but I wouldn't believe complete nonsense. The things that I believe are actually in their emails. So, like Hunter actually wrote, I give 10% to the big man, which he was referring to his father. So, but anyway.
I think it probably does, but I wouldn't put 100% certainty on it.
I wouldn't put 100% certainty on it. I mean, I would put maybe 10% certainty on it. That he was in a Moscow hotel room enjoying bodily fluids raining down upon him.
So how do you explain if that tape does...
And then the theme music. Like, they have to make it this spy thriller. They're still selling this nonsensical story as a spy thriller. Dweez Droys, Brandon Brisboy. Can they be released? I was never a fan. Dweez Droid, Brandon Brisboys. One of the great names in this channel's history. I was never a fan of the notion of that monster. That should never have been brought up. Because any type of, you ain't opening up a can of you know what? Oh, the monster is out. The sky has parted. I mean, it's like, I was never a fan of that stuff. But yes, I mean, I think there's definitely going to be, there definitely will be indictments, more indictments. You already have 2. So the special counsel, Dweez Droid, Brandon Brisboys, is on its way to doing a lot more. It just, it just has to take, they just need time. He just needs time and support from House Republicans, and he'll get that in 2022.
Does indeed exist. It hasn't been released.
Well, it hasn't needed to be released.
Why not?
Because I think the Russians felt they'd got pretty good value out of Donald Trump when he was president of the US.
Actually, the tape and evidence proving my claims don't need to be released because the Russians already got what they wanted, meaning that the evidence doesn't need to be released because they are happy enough with causing Democrats to turn into raving maniacs, paranoid, raving, hysterical maniacs. So they got exactly what they wanted. So, evidence is not needed at this time.
Anything you believe you got just wrong?
The interview I gave to Mother Jones.
That was a mistake.
I think so, yeah.
But not the P tape, not Michael Cohen in Prague, not Carter Page.
None of those things, to my mind, have been disproven.
None of those things, to my mind, have been disproven, even though they're claims that haven't been proven. So a baseless claim is only leveled against Trump. Oh no. Any claim made without evidence towards a Democrat is called baseless. Any claim made against Donald Trump, the menace to society, is a claim that hasn't yet been proven, but might be in a future alternate universe.
Totally destroyed Carter Page's life, by the way. The P tape, I've never seen it. Nobody knows it exists, but it probably exists because Trump sucked up to Russia so much, which, by the way, the administration sanctioned like 8 times during those. The whole thing's demented. And yet the media seem intent on rehabilitating this Christopher Steele guy. Why is that? Well, here's one clue. Later in the interview, Steele warned that if Donald Trump runs again, he'd be a threat to national security.
He's making moves, perhaps.
He's making moves. The dorsal fin, the orange dorsal fin is coming towards the U.S. again. He's making moves. Christopher Steele, help us. Do you have another dossier you can make up quickly?
Trump is to run again in 2024. Do you think if he runs again, he's a threat to the United States national security, to the national security of the United Kingdom?
Why would George Stephanopoulos be asking a disgraced political operative this absurd question? The only threat to national security is mashed potato brains Joe Biden and bumbling Blinken and Milley. These people are completely inept and incompetent. We already saw that 13 Americans lost their lives and 169 Afghans lost their lives, Mr. George Stephanopoulos, directly because Biden utilized the T-ban as security. Only the biggest imbecile on the planet would use the T-ban as security around the airport in Kabul. Why would you use your mortal enemy as security? And then giving them lists of names. This was not part of the Doha Agreement, which called for evacuation in January, February, March, April, and out by May 1st. But you have this media, you have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, when you hear media, from here on out, I'm not saying that this is one of the reasons to watch this channel, but I use reputable sources. I've been published in reputable, wonderful places, publications, left and conservative. And when you listen to media talk about Trump and national security, they have redefined democracy and national security as whatever suits the Democratic Party. It is not national security. Housing numbers tanked today. We just found out Jerome Powell sold stocks right before a downturn in October of last year, and he sold you had Fed officials selling stocks all throughout 2020, knowing the whole thing would tank, knowing they'd be eventually pumping stimulus because the economy would go into the toilet. I mean, these people are corrupt. It's right in front of us. They're corrupt. The media is part of it. Media is complicit. They lie by omission all the time. They're the biggest liars of all time. Trump is the most honest man who's ever lived compared to the Washington Post, the New York Times, MSNBC, CNN, Christopher Steele, and everyone who pushed the Trump Russia complete fabricated fake news, myth, and hoax. He never worked with Russia. Just like there was never WMD. Just like the Gulf of Tonkin was either a fabricated or botched intelligence report. Just like the Bay of Pigs was a completely failed intelligence operation. Just like Intel didn't know that China was launching and testing a nuclear-capable missile. Jay Matz, thank you. Jay Metz, thank you. You have to stop looking at media, ladies and gentlemen. You have to stop looking at media as... You have to stop doing two things. And I when I say you, I also mean myself. I have to stop doing this. And everyone watching, and half the country who voted for President Trump, half the electorate has to stop doing this. Number one, everyone here must never again try to convince a morally superior liberal or a never-Trumper about the culpability or the criminality or corruption of people who set up and framed Trump, or any, it could be about failed policies. It could be about atrocities taking place at the border right now. It could be about everything, the hypocrisy, the double standard. Don't think you could ever get through to them. It's impossible. The never-Trumper and morally superior liberal live in their own vacuum, their own alternate reality. They claim that Trump supporters do. It's the opposite. If President Trump didn't do the great things he did, I wouldn't vote for him and I wouldn't care about, him politically. Democrats can literally get away with anything and they'll vote blue no matter who because they're part of a cult. That's the difference. Trump supporters are not beholden to President Trump. They like what he's done. Record low unemployment. Record low national and black and Latino unemployment. The Doha Agreement, which, if implemented, would have been a completely different outcome. And I mean, foreign policy, economic policy, infinitely better. And you can't blame last year on Trump because it was Democrats who gleefully pushed to end all economic activity so they could kick Trump out of office. Okay? Didn't save even one life. Democratic-run states have the highest unemployment rates, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and up until recently dominated the per capita rates, and New York and New Jersey are still up there. And it's already a year into Biden's presidency. And they don't even follow their own protocols. Biden, the Emmys, Newsom, Nancy Pelosi, they don't even believe anything they say. But you have to stop thinking about changing anyone's mind. Just focus on, like, don't ever, like, go, I don't have Twitter or Facebook, but don't ever listen to, oh, well, you know, people defending the Russia probe or Mueller probe. Don't ever think like it's important to change their mind. Their minds will never be changed. And the second thing is, and I think this is the most important, I probably should have started first. Media is not objective. It has nothing to do with journalism. It's a propaganda machine, a public relations and propaganda machine for the Democratic Party. This would have been hyperbole and an extreme viewpoint 5-6 years ago. This is a rational, sober analysis of American media. By and large, every once in a while you'll get an article maybe defending Trump in the Washington Post. But other than that, American media is designed for one thing now. It has one objective: to stop and prevent another Trump presidency and to brainwash and gaslight and fabricate or, sweep under the rug all the negative things taking place during Biden's administration and fabricate a world that doesn't exist. So when it was Trump, we had record low unemployment, but he was a threat to democracy. Now we have everything from coal and natural gas and oil at record highs in terms of price and demand. But they're saying we have to still focus on climate change policies, and the climate change policies led to fossil fuels being in greater demand than ever. Farmer funk! What kind of cult tells people to think for themselves and stresses the importance of religious freedom of speech? I'll join that cult. Exactly. Farmer funk, thank you. Farmer funk, thank you. Thank you, Farmer Funk. Thank you so very, very much. Greatly appreciated. Greatly appreciated, Farmer Funk. Thank you. Thank you. The media is... Okay, almost all the all the journalists at CNN, everybody working at CNN, everyone is a lifelong Democrat. Everyone at MSNBC, everyone at the Washington Post, everyone at the New York Times, they're lifelong Democrats, and they despise Trump. They have the utmost contempt for Trump and Republicans. And you see this with NPR. You see this with the Los Angeles Times. You see this with you see this with the New York Times. You see this with the New Yorker, Atlantic. The Atlantic is turned into the Enquirer, the National Enquirer, but for morally superior liberals. They'll just make things up. Oh, Trump disparaged fallen Americans. How do we know? Oh, it's a source. Did that source say that Biden disparaged fallen? Oh, no, he would never do that. Except his emails, the emails from his son say that he's getting money from his son. Literally, like, those emails say that. Oh, they could be doctored. But the Steele dossier was literally fabricated, and they ran with it. And they still think there might be some truth to it. So you have the truth about them being actively suppressed. You can't talk about anything. We don't have freedom of speech anymore in this country. That's gone. There's no more freedom of speech. We have topics that we can talk about until they are suppressed. We can talk about the stock market crash impending. Who knows? Once the stock market crash takes place, there might be algorithms saying, no, you can't talk about that because the Russians want us, and the policies that led to the stock market crash were unanimously part of a consensus that we had to enact those economic policies which led to the crash. So you can't talk about them. Because you know what? The supremacists gain traction, and someplace, somebody's losing their life because of a discussion about, the stock market crash. So you can talk about it. It's just a matter of when Democrats bully social media sites. It's just a matter of when the algorithms are altered to have us not be able to talk about topics. We couldn't talk about Hunter. We definitely couldn't talk about the election. We couldn't talk about anything. And if you make a living out of giving your opinions, there's a certain point where you have to submit. It's unfortunate. And you just have to play the long game and try your best to be as genuine as possible, which I do. I'm always genuine, but I try my best to. Look, in 2016, I was doing segments on the DNC emails. If the DNC emails came out again and it was like 2024, they wouldn't allow it. They wouldn't allow it because it hurts Democrats. I mean, it's so obvious the censorship and the suppression they want has nothing to do with saving people or helping people. It has to do with suppressing dialogue and suppressing ideas and silencing debate and discussion. Generally, democratic ideas, Democratic Party or liberal or left-leaning ideas, when faced with mild scrutiny, crumble. And if the ideas themselves don't crumble, the emotion, the hysterical and apoplectic emotion tied to those ideas dissipate. So there's nothing wrong with addressing climate change. I think it's an important issue that needs to be addressed. I agree with that. I agree you need to address climate change. But not at the expense of the economy. And the notion that, if you force a transition from fossil fuels to green energy, even though 80 to 90% of the economy runs on fossil fuels right now, you're living in a fantasy world, and your policies are actually making fossil fuels go up to record highs in price and experience greater demand than in years. Their policies actually promote the opposite of what they want. So whenever you look at media, and whenever you look at what's taking place, how media spins every single topic to benefit Democrats and to disparage Trump in some way, understand that that's their goal. It's not a momentary thing. They're going to continue to do this until Republicans push back in Congress. And like I said, it's not about the Democratic Party. Morally superior liberals didn't do all of this, or they're not responsible for this mass psychosis or this hysteria. The people who are truly responsible are people like Mitt Romney and never Trump Republicans. Now, I'm not talking about the Lincoln Project. Lincoln Project are liberals. They're not Republicans. They're liberals. That's like, these are political mercenaries and operatives who have been already disgraced. Along with people like Bill Kristol, who never saw a war he didn't like and never failed at predicting anything in terms of foreign policy. They're always wrong in terms of foreign policy. And they should have been canceled, all of them, a long time ago. They all opposed marriage equality. They wanted a marriage amendment. People are being canceled for emails written 10 years ago. John Gruden should never have lost his job, okay? If Justin Trudeau and Jimmy Kimmel and Joy Reid and all of these wonderful liberal icons or leaders of thought, if they're or politicians or pundits, if they're not being canceled for what they said and did in their past, why would you cancel John Gruden? I mean, what the Raiders did was horrible. That's an issue between him, Gruden, and his players, and the Raiders players. And if they forgave him for the emails, that's what counts. Your family is who counts. The whole world can say one thing, and your family can say another thing, and it's what your family says that counts. The world, nobody should care about the opinions of imbeciles and buffoons on Twitter. A Twitter profile, most of these profiles are fake and phony anyway, or they're people hiding behind fake, pictures or whatever. These are cowards who are hiding behind, fake profiles just to insult others under the guise of being moral. Your family and people close to you, if you apologize and they accept your apology, that's what counts, not what society says. Society doesn't even have a standard by which it runs. They don't even, people are canceled only because they're expendable or they allow the left to feel morally superior. The left rarely cancels its own. Otherwise, you'd have a lot less pundits and politicians on the left. They'd all be canceled. Okay? You could start from the top. Biden himself writing the crime bill. They're now calling him a civil rights icon, which is hilarious. This man wrote literally the part of the crime bill with the 100-to-1 sentencing disparity for a narcotic that his son was accused of using. And he actually wrote the part of the crime bill that is the basis of the systemic injustice people were protesting. Then he made the despicable comment to Charlemagne the God, and Charlemagne the God didn't even say anything. But you better believe he would have said something to Trump if Trump had said something like that. So, morally superior liberals are complete hypocrites. But again, I guess I'm going on this tangent, don't look at media as, don't expect media to deviate from their obsession with Trump. They're going to be obsessed with Trump as long as they know there are people like Mitt Romney and Cheney and Kinzinger and Paul Ryan type Republicans who will be silent on cultural issues, silent on national security issues, silent on economic issues. These are silent. Only Mitch McConnell kind of pushes back, but only on certain topics. You have Rand Paul, Ron Johnson, Devin Nunes, Jim Jordan, Matt Gaetz. These people push back. They offer an alternative viewpoint. Let's continue. So again, this is not the fault, the psychosis or the hysteria or the everything from cancel culture to these protocols that Democrats don't even follow to what we see in our society is not, you can't just blame Democrats and media. It's Republicans who have undermined Trump that allow all of this to take place, because if you don't have a battle of viewpoints and ideas, if you don't have an opposing viewpoint in society, you have one-party rule. Mitt Romney and Nancy Pelosi are the same political party. That's why they all despise Trump. Because Trump came in and the party was over. Suddenly the party was over. Suddenly somebody came in. He didn't care about their sacred cows. He didn't care about their fake and phony, adherence to political correctness. None of these people, none of them truly care about what the far left cares about. None of them. They're all actors. They're all actors. That's why when you have politicians like, when you have Democrats saying things that if a Republican stated them, they'd be canceled in 2 seconds, the fact that the Democrat is able to get away with saying and doing certain things just shows the hypocrisy. But I guess the second thing in my long-winded statement is don't be surprised that everything you hear from CNN, MSNBC, The Washington Post, The New York Times will be a lie by omission. They'll tell you the truth, but it'll only be half of the truth. And that's where the narrative is altered. If you only know half, if you only know a certain number of facts or half of the truth, you're not getting the full story. But let's continue.
Yes, potentially.
A threat to our national security. This is a country, we live in a country where our national security establishment sincerely believes or claims to that Russia is the greatest threat we face. Anyone who thinks that is by definition a threat to our actual national security, because that's absurd and it's a distraction from the looming threat from the East, obviously. But the question is, how does someone like Steele, who's a buffoon, not even an American citizen, have the power to influence our political system so completely? Kash Patel lived this. He's a former White House Intel Committee National Security Advisor. Devin Nunes is ranking member on the House Intel Committee. He was the chairman when Republicans controlled the House. They've spent years on this dossier. They both join us tonight. Thank you both very much for coming on. Kash, to you first. So Christopher Steele, I would assume, since you know an awful lot about the details in this dossier, you believe owes the world a groveling apology, not to put words in your mouth.
An apology would be starters. Thanks for having us, Tucker. Look, Devin Nunes was strong enough to lead the charge.
By the way, Kash Patel and Devin Nunes are awesome. That if you had every Republican as Kash Patel and Devin Nunes and Jim Jordan and Rand Paul and Ron Johnson, you wouldn't have the dysfunctional world we have now. Okay, the reason the dysfunction is not about Nancy Pelosi, it's about Mitt Romney, it's about Paul Ryan. These are the people. It's about the morally superior never-Trumpers. These are the people who helped cause the division and dysfunction and hysteria in our country today. Because they stood silent. And even if they disagreed with Democrats, they stood silent. You can't have one-party rule, okay? You cannot have one-party rule. You simply can't have one-party rule. If you have one political party running media, all of political dialogue and thought, you're going to have a dysfunctional society. And that's what we have now. You cannot have a they fix this. You can't have a political system where one side dominates thought, discourse, debate, discussion. You can't. That's not going to work. That will simply not work.
Unearthed the false allegations in the dossier that the Hillary campaign paid for it. More fraudulently, crooks like Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, coupled with Christopher Steele, ran a false investigation into Trump for 14 months. Not just one FISA application, 4 FISA applications. And this guy now lit the world on fire. And he now wants us to apologize to him for misleading millions of Americans. I think that is the height of hypocrisy, and that is why people hate the FBI so much, including Christopher Steele as its greatest source in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And also, ask yourself, why were people misled? They wanted to be misled. Democrats they didn't care. They did not care. They didn't care that lies were being leveled against Trump. These are the people who are so sanctimonious and apoplectic all the time when it comes to Trump lying. Trump, the worst thing about Trump is that he engages in hyperbole, which more so perhaps than other presidents. But that's it. He's actually more honest than other presidents. A lot more honest. Trump wears his emotions on his sleeve. He'll go off script. Okay, Biden is always on script, and if he goes off script, they pull his microphone. And Trump was never involved with colluding alongside Russia. He was telling the truth the whole time. They were lying. Then you have like Cheney today. Trump appears personally involved in January. Well, then why wasn't he charged with sedition? Why wasn't anyone charged? They were charged with obstruction of Congress and like misdemeanors and other felonies. They were never charged with sedition. Why? If you're trying to overthrow any government, you'll be charged with sedition. They weren't, because everyone's lying about what's going on. That's why media has to hype things up, because the substance isn't there. So they have to sensationalize everything. The proof is whether they indict people on the charges that they claim. And they haven't. Oh, and by the way, something similar happened on October 14th with environmental activists. And nothing, Democrats don't care, apparently. Government building, they don't care.
Yeah, that's for sure. See, Congressman Nunes, I mean, one of the effects of the Russia hoax was to prevent the last administration from cleaning house in the permanent bureaucracy. And maybe, just to guess, you tell me that's one of the reasons the so-called intel community and the DOJ, the second Biden took over, were still there in full force to, take away the civil liberties of Trump voters.
Well, I would also say, Tucker, that most of the people that were involved in the so-called P-tape and the dossier got promotions by the Biden administration. So they were resurrected, old Obama people. But, furthermore, you have to remember, it's Steele himself who was actually working for Russians, in the past. And what did he do? He interfered in our election, the very thing he's claiming in this documentary that he was trying to protect. He's some kind of patriot. It's just, it's comical.
Nobody believes this nonsense. Nobody believes any of it, okay? Nobody believes any of it. The only people who, the only people who believe that Trump still worked with Russia are people who despise Trump so much, they've suspended all logic and rational thought. You have to convince this is the thing. The beauty of Trump is that he embodies the antithesis of all the he's the antithesis of the hypocrisy they embody. These people are hypocrites. Cheney doesn't care about, Cheney, Paul Ryan, CNN, Pelosi, they only care about political power. Trump doesn't. He was never in politics. He genuinely he loves the country. He wants the country to go in a different direction. We were doing very well. Economically, we were doing very well. Foreign policy, we were doing very well. And Cheney and Romney and Pelosi and Schumer and Biden and all of these people pushed, and Cuomo, all of these people pushed to end the United States economy. And all the consequences that resulted from the national debt soaring beyond GDP, surpassing GDP, to inflation, runaway inflation, supply chain breakdown, labor shortages, cargo and container ships, all of these problems. You have a situation where we ensured that our country would fall from a position of power to where it is now. We ensured that with an apoplectic, hysterical reaction to a disease that, by the way, is third behind cancer and heart disease. According to the CDC, cancer and heart disease ended the lives of more Americans last year, and unfortunately, they'll end the lives of more Americans this year. Yet we didn't obsess over cancer and heart disease, and you better believe McDonald's was open. So, let's continue with this.
Well, it is comical. Cash Patel, I wonder, can you think of anybody? So here you have a history-changing lie. This is not just the earth is flat kind of thing, but this was a lie with the purpose to hamstring a democratically elected administration. Has anybody ever been held accountable for this that you're aware of?
No, not internally at the FBI, but I hope John Durham's on the march to secure indictments against. Look, Christopher Steele and the FBI knew from jump that the information was bogus. They fed it to a court anyway, and they lied about it in the media and possibly leaked classified information. This guy is no hero. He is no James Bond. He's Inspector Gadget on Sudafed, and now he's crying for the world to love him. Let's not forget the lives he wrecked along the way of American citizens and the likes of myself and Devin Nunes, because we exposed it. He came after us along with the fake news media, and we're fighting on.
That's for sure. And I wish you had more time because both of you guys suffered personally. I hope you will come back to explain.
Cash Patel and Devin Nunes are awesome. They are absolutely awesome. And, here's an example. Like The Hill, they actually have some good segments. Oh, my God. My eye. Whew. But The Hill here, you have a segment titled, do you want to know what this title is? This is hilarious. Do you want to know what this title is? I'm looking here, and Liz Cheney crucifies Trump for creating, quote, prescription for national destruction. It was not Trump, although he acquiesced in the beginning. It was not Trump who pushed to end and stop American economic activity. There's another way to say it, but the algorithm is, And of course, this is ratioed also. They have a select committee for January. They haven't charged anyone with sedition, not one person. If I'm wrong, let me know. Because they have to prove in sedition that there's an organized plot. They have to prove it's an organized plot. Just like Durham has to prove that Christopher Steele didn't believe anything that he was spreading, which is easy to, that's not difficult. Christopher Steele did not believe anything in that dossier. It was purchased. Nice. Eric, you got the air fryer? Nice. How good is that thing? Or any air fryer. The air fryer is fantastic. Air fry my own potatoes. Nice, Eric. How good is air frying your own French fries. Works too for other things also. Much better than a deep fryer. Much better. Oh my God. A deep fryer is dangerous. Also, I mean, you don't want unless you have a diner, you don't want a deep fryer in your home. An air fryer is fantastic. Right, Indy? Isn't it great? By the way, you have a really courageous activist who called for George W. Bush to be tried on war crimes. Now, he'll never be tried. Well, I don't say ever, but he's not going to be tried on war crimes anytime soon. But the Bill Kristol and the Lincoln Project and the neoconservatives, they're next after Bush being tried for war crimes. They're the ones who pushed. You see, the thing is, nice. Dweez, Droid, Brandon, Briz Boys. Isn't that, yes. Oh, deep fry. I thought you said air fry, because you can air fry that also. CNN Republican candidates can ignore Trump, but he won't go away. They're running. And listen, they're running out of. They're running out of things to talk about on CNN. Trump, the contagion, the orange contagion called Trump. You can't. There's no way to inoculate yourself from the orange contagion called Trump. They don't have it. Republican candidates can ignore Trump, but he won't go away. What is the point of this headline? Why would you ignore Trump when he got 73 million Americans, and if Mitt Romney were GOP nominee, he wouldn't even get 60 million. He barely got 60 million last time around. And he had positive media coverage compared, oh my God, favorable media coverage compared to today. Trump and all. Republican candidates can ignore Trump, but he won't even go away. All right, let's listen. One Republican is trying his hand at lifting the curse that Donald Trump has inflicted on his party in America's suburbs. By just pretending he doesn't exist. Oh my goodness, the curse. You got 73 million Americans with universally negative media coverage. God forbid CNN ever did. Has CNN ever published a positive piece on Trump? Has MSNBC? You could count on one hand the positive articles on Trump in the Washington Post and maybe one or two in the New York Times, maybe in the past 4 years. When will people realize that media is their only job? The job of media, the job description, the objective is not to inform or definitely not to educate or illuminate or spread or journalism. Has nothing to do with journalism. The goal of media is simply to make sure Trump never gets back in power. That's it. That's their only goal. Yes. Rather have the air fryer reheat things. That's true. So, Nice. Scrambled eggs in the air fryer. Wow, okay. Okay. It lacked class. Trump's bad taste assault on the former Secretary of State. They're the ones, by the way, who went after Vietnam veterans. One man in particular in the Lincoln Project disparaged, questioned the patriotism, tried to insult Max Cleland. I mean, it was just a sustained, prolonged political attack. Despicable. Infinitely worse than anything Trump has ever said. And they were saying the same things about McCain. They were saying the same things about McCain that Trump said. Worse, actually. Rensler! Joe Rogan bent CNN over. World doesn't care. I know. Joe Rogan did an amazing job. But see, Rensler, thank you so very much. The world, they don't care because they're in... they're in this kind of... they're immune to hypocrisy. They don't want... Rensler, thank you so very much. They want to disparage anyone who doesn't fall in line. But there are people who are big enough, like Joe Rogan or Dave Chappelle. If you're self-sufficient, if you can't be... This is the thing. If you can't be silenced through economic means... Elron, hello. If you can't be silenced... Rensler, thank you so very, very much. If you can't be silenced through economic means... You don't have to play ball with them. They can't. Canceling is only about economics. That's really what it's about. It's about getting people. It's about hurting people economically because they can't actually win. This is why half the country looks at the other half and says, "Nah, I'm not going to listen to you." And the more that people don't acquiesce or don't accept the back and forth and the flip-flopping and the just obvious, fabricated, just made-up nonsense and the distorted analysis and the cost-benefit analysis imposed upon half the country, the more that people say, nah, I don't care, I'm not going to listen to you, and I have my own thoughts. Oh my God, it gets them so upset. So they want... If you don't bow to their sacred cows, their absurd, arbitrary ideals, their dogma that they just created the past couple of years, their way of getting back at you is first through bullying and intimidation and insults on social media, but then it's, okay, let's silence this person economically. We can silence the person economically. The person won't have a platform. They won't have a base to, to spread thoughts that deviate from the official narrative. The official narrative is generally wrong, especially when there's hysteria involved. The official narrative is generally wrong. Rensler, thank you so very, very much. Rensler, thank you. Thank you, Rensler, thank you. Yeah, I mean, you couldn't. There are people like I say this, like Rensler, everybody here. If they don't have all of late night social media algorithms, New York Times, MSNBC, if they don't have every conceivable advantage, they crumble as a political party and ideology. They're propped up not because of their ideas. Their ideas nobody even believes. Their ideas, their obsessions, nobody really believes and or trusts them because they went from Trump worked with Russia to, we know exactly what's best for you in 2 seconds. And they tanked the United States economy forever. And they don't have a consensus on anything. They have a fabricated consensus that, again, is only made through bullying and suppression of dialogue and discussion. Any expert or authority that disagrees is excommunicated and, insulted. But think of it this way, ladies and gentlemen. If they didn't have every conceivable advantage, where would they be? Think about that. Where would they be? If they didn't have every conceivable advantage, you need, if one day Seth Meyers and Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert and John Oliver and Trevor Noah just said, okay, we're just going to focus on comedy. Trevor Noah and Oliver, yeah, they're politics. They've always focused on politics. But like Jimmy Kimmel, he's a comedian. He was never into politics. Never. He should have been canceled because of the Man Show, and they didn't, because Democrats revere power. If you're powerful enough, wealthy enough, they're not going to cancel you if you're on their side. So, and that goes for Jimmy Kimmel. It goes for the $20 million venture capital pundits. They're all hypocrites. They don't even believe in the sacred cows that they prop up. They only utilize this notion of trying to silence and a reckoning. They only utilize that just to gain political power and momentum, not to actually uphold any ideals. They don't care about the ideals. Rinsler! The uncancellables need to band together, I think. I agree with you. There are no more martyrs. There are no martyrs or William Wallaces to follow. Exactly. Maybe that lieutenant colonel. Yeah, I agree with you. That's true. Stuart Scheller. He's awesome. Rensler, I agree with you. The only thing is, it's like, I think, Rensler, great point. I think that once you have Republicans offering a different viewpoint, if you have Republicans offering a different viewpoint, actually offering an opposition, if you have Republicans like Trump Republicans taking over the House, you'll have a better world. You'll have a better world. We have a one-party rule. This is bad. Very bad. Very, very, very bad. We have one-party rule now. One-party rule is not good. One-party rule has brought us to what we face, has brought us to where we're at today. That's the reason why they get to cancel their political rivals, but not themselves. You have Cheney, who is already defeated. The neoconservatives, the 2000s Republicans are done forever. Thank you, Scarlett. Thank you. The 2000s Republicans are done forever. There will never again be a Republican Party with these types of people. The anti-war sentiment is coming from the right, conservatives, not the left. The left will deal with anything. If they cheat Bernie Sanders, it's better than Republicans. If they start a war, it's better than Republicans. Anything's better. That's the cult. I wouldn't vote for President Trump if he didn't want to negotiate the Doha Agreement, which Biden completely failed at and botched. And the consequences were tragic, devastating, horrendous. I mean, this is, thank you. Top Cork 22, thank you. This is a fleeting moment in history, ladies and gentlemen. Just like the 2000s Republicans were a fleeting moment in history. They caused a lot of damage. But don't think that like you'll have late night and all of media and all of government and every social media algorithm, and don't think that every advantage Democrats have now they'll always possess. That's not true. You look, the same thing took place. You had Bush Republicans, and Rinsler, thank you so very much. You had Bush Republicans control the narrative, completely control the narrative. You had Bush Republicans completely control the narrative in the early 2000s. Completely. You had them completely control the narrative in the early 2000s. Okay? Not the Democrats. The Democratic Party was almost like the Republican Party now. What the Democratic Party did in the early 2000s was acquiesce. That's what the Republicans are doing now. The difference is that you still had free speech. There weren't many ways to actually silence people back then. Now, information travels through little, gatekeepers. So, social media is a conduit or a middleman or, allows for suppression. So, social media is aside from YouTube, even though I'm a little biased because I have 2 YouTube channels. By the way, subscribe to the Stock Market Crash channel. But aside from YouTube, there's no reason to be on social media. There's no reason to be on. Give me a reason. There is no reason, none at all. There's no reason at all to be on Twitter. Twitter does nothing for anyone. I look at, there are economists that I watch read on Twitter. In that respect, yes, you can kind of, find some interesting ideas or analysis, but that's all of those people could start YouTube channels tomorrow, and they would be able to circumvent Twitter, or they could start their own, newsletters, and they could circumvent Twitter, and they'd probably, if they just did a tiny bit more, if they exerted a tiny bit more effort than the energy they use on Twitter, they could probably get a much wider audience just from a newsletter. But, aside from maybe at certain times communicating ideas, Twitter is really just a political platform or a platform to just foment negative emotions, a platform that foments negative emotions. If you could break down emotions that people felt from Twitter every day, 85% would be negative. 85% to 90% would be linked to negative emotions. And then the 10%, the majority of the 10% linked to positive emotions would be tied to the negative emotions, because there would be glee and tribalism that, promotes a sense of security from everyone in your little subgroup or subculture saying the same thing. So then the positive emotions you derived would be actually linked to the negative emotions that Twitter helps foster. If there was ever a place for digital or cyber tribalism, it's Twitter. It is the most unhealthy place on the planet. And it allows the dumbest ideas to gain traction. Usually ideas ideas resonate because they make sense, or they're good ideas, or usually you and Janice, thank you so very much. Usually you would have ideas flourish because they're truthful and they help people and they resonate and they make sense. Or they're more accurate, or they're better than other ideas. Ideas compete with other ideas, or the merits of your argument allow you to gain traction or to gain a following. But you don't even need to have a good argument. You just need to have emotion. AOC never makes an argument that's irrational. Very, very, almost always, her arguments are based on emotion and not rational thought, or hypocrisy, or an attempt at, or just an attempt at trying to preach and condemn at the expense of logic. Or it's just an attempt to preach and condemn in a manner that helps the Democratic Party and shields the Democratic Party from its culpability in whatever she's preaching and condemning against. So, Paul, thank you. Thank you, Paul, as always. Janice, thank you. But you type in Trump, they're still trying to Schiff vehemently disagrees with Attorney General Garland's reluctance to pursue Trump. It's like they're not pursuing Trump because they have no evidence. That's the thing. I mean, and really, Democrats are squandering whatever political power that they have. They're only going to be in office until November of next year. So, and they're going to spend most of the year campaigning. I mean, 2022 is going to be fun for this channel is going to grow. We'll go past 200,000 finally. The channel will grow. Durham special counsel will indict more people. The writings on the wall, the House Democrats know they're going to be overrun by House Republicans. We will have, unfortunately, a stock market crash and a crisis, and people will be begging for new leadership. Begging. So, he's 40 years from now, some of them will blame Trump. You're right. Nuna, hello. Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you. Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you. Let's see. All they can do now, I mean, you have such terrible news now. The housing market %78% of community bank executives expect the housing market to crash by 2026. Really? It'll take that long? I don't think so. And you look today, Zillow's plunging stock. So that was bad. February Zillow stock was trading at a high of 212. On Monday, it finished the day perilously close to a 52-week low. You're seeing all of this. It was pausing home buying business for at least the remainder of 2021. Okay. You know that Zillow, when it goes down, you know that that's a precursor of things to come. Evergrande, Zillow, all of these, like, you see all of these, you see the writing on the wall. So, you see the writing on the wall. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much. I think I'm going to call it an evening. To my super chat, thank you so much. I can't thank you. Let's go, Brandon. That's right. I can't thank you enough. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. To my super chat, thank you. I can't do this without you. I will be back tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'm going to try to do a live stream earlier. So I'll actually try to do a live stream at like about 3:30 or 4. So be here tomorrow, like around 4 p.m. Pacific on this channel for the live stream. Check out the Stock Market Crash channel. I have a fantastic segment. And I think the container and cargo ships are just going to continue to, drift out at sea. The supply chain issue is still going to be, they haven't even come close to fixing it. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I mean, eventually they'll get to port, but it's going to be too late for retailers. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I will see you all tomorrow. Watch the segment on the Stock Market Crash channel about an hour from now. And I will see you all tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so very, very much. To my super chat, thank you. I'll see you tomorrow, everyone.